I thought I was losing my wife, but then I found out the truth. Here's how I uncovered the affair that shattered my world. I'm in my mid-30s, and my wife and I have a young child. Ever since he was born, she seemed distant and short with me, and it's only gotten worse over the last 3 months or so. She started making friends who don't have kids, and she goes out more often. When I ask if I can join her, she always has a reason why I shouldn't come along. It's not hard for her to find one, since one of us has to stay home with our child. When I shared how I've been feeling, she told me she feels like she's lost her identity, going through pregnancy, breastfeeding, and now motherhood. She says she wants to spend time with people who don't have kids and live her own life for a bit. Because of this, she sometimes goes out until 2 a.m. or takes weekend trips without me. It feels like she's withdrawing from me, and I sense that she's not always being upfront. I don't go through her phone, but I've noticed she never leaves it out like she used to. She even takes it to the shower with her, which she never did before. I don't think she's being unfaithful, though the thought has crossed my mind. When I asked her directly, she got really upset and told me it's not about that. I told her that I want to be part of what she's going through, but she said I don't have the same passion for the things she wants to do. She says I need to find my own interests and make my own friends. I genuinely enjoy her main hobby, and I've tried to show interest, but she insists that I don't love it the way she does. She says she just wants to be around people who appreciate it like she does. I feel like I'm losing my best friend of 15 years. My toddler is the one bright spot in my life right now. I don't know what to do, and I've been feeling so sad. Update 1. Things have been off with my wife. We've been together for 15 years, married for 5, and we have a 14-month-old son. Since he was born, things have been rough, and they've only gotten worse over the last few months. She's gotten face injections and lost weight in a way that raised red flags, even making me wonder about possible substance use. She's also been extremely protective of her phone and has been acting generally evasive. When I confronted her, I was completely gaslit, so much so that I set an appointment with a therapist, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid and insecure and needed help figuring out why I felt the way I did. Yesterday, she told me she needed a weekend to herself. She said she wanted to go to the mountains, go snowboarding, and get a full night's rest away from our fussy baby. But it didn't sit right with me. She recently went back on birth control without talking to me, got face injections, went for a wax, and even asked me to put the snowboard rack on her car. And despite claiming she was going alone, everything just seemed off. There were too many red flags, so I decided to hire a private investigator. The PI quickly secured photos and video proving the affair. Turns out she's sleeping with her boss. They're up there together until Sunday, probably still together right now. I feel like a fool. We've all hung out together multiple times. I'm furious that she'd risk blowing up not only our lives but also the life of our 1-year-old. And now I'm stuck having to deal with her, essentially for the rest of my life, because of our shared son. I contacted a lawyer to file for divorce and plan to confront her when she gets back, but it'll likely be over a year before the divorce is finalized. This is going to be a long, painful process. Update 2. When she left for her trip, I decided to hire a private investigator, thinking that an apology for breaching her trust would be easier to handle than the ongoing uncertainty. I hoped I'd find out I was just being paranoid. But less than 45 minutes later, the PI sent me photos and videos of her picking him up, casually kissing him, and ending the night together at an Airbnb. This confirmation came in on a Friday, but she didn't come home until Sunday morning. During the entire trip, she texted and called as if everything was normal. After finding out, I had a small breakdown. The first person I called was my therapist. Having an established therapist is one of the few silver linings of all the gaslighting. My second call was to my sister, who lives a bit far but still in the same state. She came up to support me and helped me stabilize. My next thought was how to move forward, aiming to leave the house but secure a way to have my son with me at least 50% of the time. I'll outline my steps quickly in case, God forbid, anyone else faces a similar situation. Secured firearms. I contacted a hunting buddy to store my pew and bow, eliminating any possibility of her claiming an unsafe environment due to firearms, even though I keep them in a safe. Installed a nanny cam for documentation. I wanted to avoid any chance of false accusations, so I set up a nanny cam to document the confrontation. Since I live in a one-party consent state, this was an easy choice. Arranged alternative housing. I found a month-to-month furnished rental with 2 bedrooms and a good workspace for remote work. The area needed to be suitable for potential objections. Secured a short-term Airbnb. To bridge the gap until my lease started, I arranged a short-term Airbnb that met the same requirements as the rental. Sought therapy for clarity. As irrational as it sounds, figuring out what you want in this situation is tough. Am I willing to let her rob me of 50% of my son's life? That's 9 years out of 18. Realizing that the decision to leave might feel less like my choice and more like her doing is incredibly painful. Practice the confrontation. I planned a 3 to 5 minute conversation to avoid escalation, saying, I know about the affair. I'm not ready to talk, so I'm moving out while I figure out a way forward. We need to discuss short-term custody arrangements for our son. I practiced this repeatedly, preparing for reactions like anger, sadness, denial, and attempts to shift blame onto me. Kept composure. Don't aim to win the confrontation. Focus on not losing. This is even more important if you're committed to fighting for custody. Avoid pettiness. Don't destroy their belongings, and don't provoke them. This person will be in your life through your relationship with your child, and it's already going to be hard enough. Don't make it worse, and don't hand them any ammunition. In my case, I didn't anticipate her no-response reaction. My wife sat there, silent. No apology, no admission, just a blank stare. In the days since, I've continued therapy and identified patterns of gaslighting and emotional abuse leading up to the affair. Apparently, this is common in infidelity cases, as it helps the cheater justify their actions to themselves. Even now, I feel her trying to manipulate me into working things out for our son's sake. I don't trust her, but worse, I don't trust myself to talk to her about what happened. I'm afraid of being gaslit again and ending up feeling like this was somehow my fault. I have a marriage counseling session scheduled for Monday to finally address what happened and discuss how we can move forward as co-parents. She's already claimed it was her first time and a mistake. I don't believe her, but I also can't prove she's lying. I'm still figuring out how to handle that on Monday. I can't envision a future where we stay married, but I also can't bear the thought of losing half my time with my child. When the time comes, I want to be able to look my child in the eye and tell them I did everything I could to be there for them. This is painful, and it's going to be painful for a while. Please, don't cheat. Update 3. A while back, I wrote about catching my wife in an affair with her boss. Let's call him Benny and her 𝗙𝗂𝗧. I've received an overwhelming number of DMs asking if I'm alright and if there are any updates, so I'm posting this last update before deleting the account. If you want the background, you can check my post history. I'm not going to rehash it all again. Also, understand that this is not a complete history. It's been a long 8 months. Very shortly after I moved out, I had a friend tell me that 𝗙𝗂𝗧 went out to dinner with his wife and the wife of another friend of mine, who were also friends of hers. He said that she got drunk, told them what had happened, and when they weren't sympathetic, invited Benny to join them. He said it was a whole scene, and she was all over him. She later admitted that she went and spent that night at his house but swore up and down that they didn't sleep together and that she spent the night on his couch. She swore that she just felt alone, like none of her friends cared about her, and didn't want to be alone at the Airbnb. At the time, we were alternating staying at the marital home on our days with our son, and the other would stay at an Airbnb. We went to see a therapist at that time. Therapy went the way of straight trickle truthing. She would wait to see what I knew, admit only that, and swear there was nothing else. She swore that the time I caught her, when she spent an entire weekend with him at an Airbnb, was the first and only time. She cried and begged me to believe her and give her another chance and take her back. She said that he was old, she didn't find him attractive, and called him short. She said it was just a mistake. She claimed it wasn't about him but about what she was going through, and he was just a symptom. She said she'd do anything. I told her she had to tell me the truth, but she refused to budge from her original story. So, after hitting a brick wall in couples therapy and her refusing to tell me the truth about what happened, I said I couldn't keep going. I signed a long-term lease and tried to focus on myself with the understanding that we would try therapy again in a few months. We continued to split custody 50-50, and 𝗙𝗧𝗧 made a legitimate effort to help me settle into my new place. We started going through mediation for a divorce. Why start mediation if we were planning on trying therapy again? What we said out loud was because it takes forever, and if therapy went the same way as the first time, we didn't want to be stuck in limbo longer than necessary. A couple of months into mediation, the mediator asked us if we had seen a therapist who specializes in infidelity. We said we had seen a couples therapist but not a specialist. She said she had some referrals if we were interested. 𝗙𝗧𝗧 said she was, and that she'd be willing to go if I agreed to it. I agreed as well. Given how far we had gotten through mediation, it felt like it was now or never. When we went to see the specialist, I had given our marriage a 5% chance of surviving the year. But Mr. 𝗙𝗪𝗹, how could you not be 100% done after knowing she was still lying about the affair? The plain answer is I wanted to believe she would show up, tell the whole truth, and ask for forgiveness for what she had done, and for not coming clean the first time. If she had done that, I think I could have seen a path, albeit a long one, back to trying to make our family whole. Also, the prospect of missing half of your son's life while he's so young is difficult to face, and just say it's 100% off the table. So, we had a joint introductory session with the specialist, and then a week later, an individual one. It was after that I was given information that 𝗙𝗧𝗧 had still been seeing Benny. I didn't believe it at first. I looked into it and checked with a few other sources, and was then presented with indisputable evidence that she not only continued to see him, but had brought him around our son multiple times. I haven't mentioned it, but we had an agreement that we would communicate with each other and get sign-off if anyone outside the family was going to be introduced or spend time with him. She had broken this agreement. I was crushed. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't understand it. Why agree to see the specialist if you've been seeing Benny? Why not just file and move forward? It felt like some sociopathic behavior. I flat out asked her if she had been seeing Benny, and in an accusatory tone, she admitted it. I asked if she had brought him around our son, and she straight up lied, saying she saw him only when our son wasn't around or after he had fallen asleep. I asked why she would agree to see the specialist if she had been seeing Benny. Why not just go through with the divorce? She said she didn't want our son to grow up in a broken home. I lost it. I said some mean things that I honestly can't remember, but it was along the lines of her being just like her mother, and I hung up. Then the fishing began. She texted and asked questions, trying to deny things without being specific about what she was denying, with lines like, "You jumped to an awful lot of conclusions there." She tried gaslighting me into thinking it wasn't a big deal. "I thought you'd be relieved not to have to go through any more therapy and make me be the one to call it quits. I honestly am appalled by how you've taken this stance." I started thinking about why I was so upset. I had told myself that the odds of therapy working out and her coming clean were low. This was the likely outcome. I wondered why I had agreed to go back, despite being told she spent the night with him again after the first time I caught her. I started taking long walks at night when I didn't have my son, to think about it all. After reflecting for a while, I came to the conclusion that I was upset because I felt like she had chosen him over me, and that made me feel worthless. I had ignored a lot of things in an attempt to not feel worthless. After a few more walks, I realized that wasn't true. She begged me to take her back on her terms, and I had refused her. She didn't choose him. She was stuck with him. Benny is sending his kid from his last marriage off to college. If he sticks around, he'll He'll be collecting social security by the time Chrissy and my son are out of the house. He's supposed to trust her, knowing how they met, and she's supposed to trust him, knowing that infidelity doesn't bother him. Plus, imagine the anxiety that would wash over you when people ask how they met. She took away any doubt that moving forward with the divorce is the right decision. I'm stuck co-parenting with her, but I get to do that from a place of having seen her and can move forward with my eyes wide open. If this seems disjointed, it is. I wrote this over several sittings, and did it for myself to help with introspection as much as anything. But by the time I was done, I figured there wasn't any harm in changing the names and giving a last update. To those who reached out with support, even though I didn't respond, please know it was appreciated. For those who only reached out to ask for updates out of what I assume is morbid curiosity, I'd recommend some long walks and a bit of introspection. And to Chrissy, if you see this, please know that you are just like your mother, and you're going to end up just like her.